I didn't. Maybe it's recording. If it's not, I'll get yours. Okay. So, welcome to the magic and mystery of the labyrinth. And today is May Day. So, what we see on the screen here is on the left hand side is a painting by a French artist called May Day. And you'll see in the back there's some people dancing around some maypoles. And the labyrinth has been connected with the maypole. So, it's very appropriate that we have this on May Day. Oh, and by the way, there are numbers on the slides. Hopefully you can see them. And we'll do question and answer when I'm done with the slides. So if you can see the number of the slide, if you have a question about that slide, just, write down the number. Or if you can't see the number, just, make a note of what's on the slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions later. Good. So this is me. So this is me painting the center of a labyrinth in Tempe, Arizona a few years ago. And I've been building labyrinths since 1992, and I'm a founding member of the Labyrinth Society. And if you'd like to see articles I've written about labyrinths, you can just Google my name in Labyrinth and Op-Ed News, which is who I write for. So op is OP for opinion, ed is ED for editorial, and then news for news. And if you just Google that, you should see a bunch of them come up. And if you just get one at the bottom of it, you'll get all the rest of them. You'll find everything you possibly could need to know about labyrinths there. So walking a labyrinth has a lot of excellent health benefits. Johns Hopkins has tested it. In fact, they even built their own labyrinth there. And it reduces stress, it can reduce insomnia, it can reduce high blood pressure, it can decrease pain, it can walking your labyrinth with your non-dominant, a finger labyrinth with your non-dominant hand can create new neural pathways in the brain, which is always good, and it just feels good. Most people who have walked labyrinths with me, when they come out, they're like, I just feel good. And I think it organizes the cells in our body. It's really hard to tell exactly what's going on. But I do know that people who walk into a labyrinth feeling sick almost always walk out feeling much, much better. Myself included. I was having an allergy attack one day, a really bad one. And in my experience with allergy attacks, is they never went away until I went to sleep and woke up the next day. And I walked into the labyrinth with an allergy attack. I felt it, healing happen in the center. And when I walked out, I was fine. Here we go. So, yes, and it's fun too. Here's some kids having fun on a labyrinth. And here's a beautiful reflection of my girlfriend Sue Ann's labyrinth. We'll see more of that in a minute. Here it is. She painted it so it felt like you were walking through a garden. And this gal's using it with kids. Kids love it. They love to walk through the labyrinth and feel what it feels like in the middle. Here's one in a medical center. There's a lot of labyrinths built around the United States. Oh my gosh. I think there's 4,000 or 5,000 labyrinths listed on the Labyrinth Locator, which basically tells labyrinths around the world that you can go walk. This one's beautiful. This is made from lavender. I just can hardly imagine how awesome it would be to walk through this labyrinth smelling the lavender. And this is me at a labyrinth conference wearing one of my wearable art. And this labyrinth is made from strips of canvas held down by solar lights. And so at night it's lit up. And this was a labyrinth that was installed at Burning Man a couple of different years. And this is a labyrinth picture that was sent to me just this morning by Sarah Anderson. And she's in South Carolina, and I don't know if she saw this labyrinth this morning or yesterday, but I thought that was fun, and it's a labyrinth I don't know about, and close enough for any of us who are local. If you drive through South Carolina, we might be able to find it. So Brook Green Gardens. So what's the difference between a maze and a labyrinth? This is a really good question. Sum up. What you're looking at here is a maze. So a maze has many paths and there's choices, whereas a labyrinth has only one path. So the idea with a maze is that it's a game. It engages your left brain. It engages problem solving. It keeps your brain active, trying to figure things out so you don't get lost. And that's on the left-hand side of this picture. On the right-hand side is a labyrinth, which is a unicursal path. That means it has one path. You don't have to make any decisions or choices. You put one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get to the circle, and then you'll come back out again. And so a labyrinth is designed, because you don't have to make choices, to be a little bit boring to the point where you can get into an altered state or a more spiritual level. And so that's where the healing aspects seem to come from. So this is a maze in New Harmony, Indiana. It's a beautiful maze. I've been there. And for people who are local to Virginia Beach and Norfolk, this is the Governor's Palace in Colonial Williamsburg, and they have a maze, a hedge maze behind there. They were very popular in England. Some of the kings of England who had girlfriends that weren't supposed to created mazes so they could have their little trysts in there. So types of labyrinths. This is a wonderful one at my girlfriend's house in Arizona, in her backyard. And this picture's from the summer solstice one year when I was down there. So the first type we'll look at is the medieval or the Chart labyrinth, and that's this design here that you see. And it's called the Chart labyrinth because the most famous one is at Chart Cathedral. And so you see the actual photo of the labyrinth at the top left. People are actually walking it. At the bottom left is an exact copy of that labyrinth on the floor of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. I've walked that one too. It's beautiful. They have two. They have one indoors and one outdoors. And then on the right-hand side, you can see an antique, I guess it's an engraving, and you can see the labyrinth in the center there. It was already 500 years old when this print was made in 1700s. So it's been there a long time. So here's another Chart type labyrinth that my friend John Ritter makes from Paxworks. And here's one painted on cloth, made by Labyrinth Enterprises, which was Judy Hopin, who's since passed away. Robert Foray, she was the labyrinth painter, and Robert Foray ran that business for many years. He was kind of like the founding godfather of labyrinths in the United States. And here's an exact replica also of the Chart labyrinth. You can see Robert at the upper left there measuring, and the project architect. They went to Chart Cathedral and measured every centimeter, and then they copied it exactly. So this is at New Harmony, Indiana. And here's one that I did at, was formerly at the ARE, Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach. I think it was there about 10 years. We painted this on the terrazzo patio, and it was 48 feet across. And I liked it because it was flat. That meant it was wheelchair accessible. So the wheelchair could go through this because there's no bumps. And I actually watched one day as a gal in a wheelchair got pushed through to the center. And I was pretty far away watching. And when she got into the center, I saw her talking to the gentleman who had pushed her in, who I found out later was her husband. And she got up and pushed her labyrinth herself. I mean, pushed her wheelchair herself all the way out of the labyrinth. And so I went up and talked to her. And I guess that she probably had multiple sclerosis. MS people find a lot of help with the labyrinth. A lot of them, my girlfriend built labyrinths out in the Arizona desert, and they had paths that were 4 feet wide, and they pushed wheelchair-bound multiple sclerosis patients through there. And more than half of them started walking, and they were the ones that the doctors had given up on completely. So anyway, I found out from her that she had MS. She had been at the ARE for a week at a conference. Her she had He had pushed her through the labyrinth every day for a week, and her goal was the last day she was there to walk herself out, and that was the day, and that was she did it. And then she said to me, every day I walk this labyrinth, I've been wishing I could meet the person who built it. Can you tell me who that is? And of course it was me. So that was a very fun synchronistic story. And I just happened to be walking by the labyrinth and see her being pushed through. So I'm not always up there. So here's another one at the Walter Reed Military Medical Center, and a yoga class on the labyrinth with former President Obama. And here's one done outdoors with little flags. So you stick the flags in the ground and then you wrap that yellow tape around them. And they did this as a way to collect shoes for homeless people. So everyone who came to walk the labyrinth brought a pair of shoes and deposited them there. And they were successful. Here she is dancing afterwards, or before, I guess. This is a beautiful labyrinth in California. I remember. It's, I'll show you up close. It's made out of bazillions of little tiny mosaic pieces. And I have walked this labyrinth in bare feet right after a rain, and it just feels so good on your feet. So if you're ever, you can look these labyrinths up on the labyrinth locator. And this is what a finger labyrinth looks like, carved out of wood. It's by iSpiritual. They have a lot of great labyrinth things, iSpiritual.com. And we are going to be making our own finger labyrinths later this afternoon in my workshop. Not quite as fancy as this wood one. This one says on the back, the Red Earth Chart Labyrinth. So this is again a chart design. And now we'll look at some classical or also called Cretan labyrinths. And it's basically the same design. It looks pretty different from the design at right, which is the man in the maze from Native American images, but it's actually basically the same path through there from two different cultures too, we'll see. So this is the in Tucson, Arizona, based on the man in the maze labyrinth made from stone. And you can see up here on the upper left, this same Cretan or classical. The reason it's called Cretan is that the first labyrinth that was discovered was on a coin in Crete about, I don't know, 500 years, I think, BCE. Of these that predate that. So the earliest representations are about 4,000 years old. Labyrinthos.net at the lower left is a great website for more information on labyrinths. And here's a clay labyrinth that was found that dates from 1200 BCE. So labyrinths have been around for a long time. They're very archetypal pattern, and they speak to the soul. Now, this labyrinth, even though it looks square, it's the same path as the round ones. It's just squared up, and some artists find it easier to draw a square than a circle. That's why some of those are created like that. So here's me in Venice Beach, California, walking a labyrinth I carved in the sand. I was down there. It was a beautiful day. My girlfriend was with me. I just took a stick, made a labyrinth in the sand, walked it. She took a picture. So you can kind of make a labyrinth anywhere. Here's Jeff and Mary, and in their labyrinth, they got married 10 years ago, and this is them getting married inside their labyrinth. I designed 2 labyrinths for them. This one is the masculine labyrinth because it has all those stumps around it, and it's nicknamed actually Stumphenge. And then there's a feminine labyrinth on the other side of the property that was kind of created inside an indentation. And they actually have an Airbnb up there. It's Stillwater's Retreat Center. So if you're looking for a lovely place to stay, down there beyond that weeping willow is a lake. They have beautiful, beautiful retreat property. So, and they're fun musicians, both of them. So if you get up in that area, it's a very fun place to stay. So here's a 7th Circuit classical labyrinth designed, and Sig Lonergan, who wrote the very first book about labyrinths. in like the late 80s or early 90s, maybe, um, designed these path numbers. So if you number the paths from out going in, but if you notice how you walk in, I think you can see my cursor. When you walk into number 3. And then as you go around here, then you go from 3 to 2. And as you go around here, you go from 2 to 1. So this is the path order. And some musicians have put it together with music using C for the root chakra. And so they actually create musical compositions based on this particular order of notes, which is based on how you walk through the paths. And there's some beautiful, very meditative labyrinth music out there that that you can get and play as you walk the labyrinth. So here's my friend Marty Kane, and Marty trains horses in a labyrinth, and she says they learn better. I've taught my kids how to draw a labyrinth quickly with their on their paper before they take a test and walk their finger through it, and they all thought that they did better on the tests after they, if they walked it with their finger first. And there's something about it that seems to coordinate two sides of the brain for people and apparently as well as animals, and animals love the labyrinths. So here we have a connection with Mayday, and if you hold the ribbon while you're walking around the labyrinth, then it'll weave the ribbons in a particular pattern on the Mayday pole. And there is a woodcut from a long time ago, I think it was the 15 or 1600s, that shows people walking, doing exactly this, walking the labyrinth while they're holding the ribbons. And here is me and Anna Ebel. We built this labyrinth in 2019, the last outdoor labyrinth I did before the pandemic. And you can see at the upper right, I did a layout for it. I measured with those little dots. I put string out first, and then we put out, I think I had 300 pinwheels, and they were glittery, and this is of course at the beach, so they were spinning around as people were walking them, while people had scarves and stuff to wave, and it was really an art happening, as they used to say. This is very interesting. This shows the relationship of the classical or Cretan labyrinth to the Greek key design. So down in the lower right, number 5, is the labyrinth that we've just been looking at, the 7th Circuit Greek or classical labyrinth. And the upper one, number 1, is, of course, the Greek key design. And if you imagine that shape to be kind of malleable, and see in number 2, we're starting to stretch it out. And on number 3, we've stretched it out to the 1/4. And on number 4, we've stretched it out half. And then if you bring this side all the way down again to touch here, you've got the labyrinth, which is amazing to me how the labyrinth, some of the first information we've discovered has been in Greece. And then here, of course, is the Greek connection. So here's a classical or Cretan labyrinth, again done with the little flags in the ground. But this is my friend Alex Champion did this, and he used different colored ribbons for the chakra colors as you walk through the labyrinth, which was fun. Now, the interesting thing, he set this up for the Dowsers Conference. So during the course of several days, people walked this and walked this. And then when they were done, he came in and he took the flags and the ribbons away. And this is what was left, an imprint of the labyrinth from people walking it. And that's really magical. And we had another experience with that happen at the Capitol building. I don't have a picture of the imprint, so remember this, but I'll be showing you the Capitol. So here's another one that I made at the beach with just flotsam and jetsam. Just grabbed some sticks I had at the beach so I could walk a labyrinth. And this one I made out of bird seed. So this is a house that I was lucky enough to house sit for 2.5 years while I lived in California. And the little shape that you see on the bottom, it's a little faded, but you can see the shape of the labyrinth there in that kind of light tan. That's actually bird seed. And here's the bird seed. And the reason I did this, I was house sitting. It wasn't my property. I couldn't really do anything permanent or even semi-permanent. So I figured this is great. I'll do it with birdseed. I'll walk it for a while and the birds will come eat the birdseed by the time I leave and it'll be gone. And that's exactly what happened. And this is the view that I had. You can see a little bit of the labyrinth down here on the bottom left. And this is the panoramic view of the San Fernando Valley that I had in the backyard of this house I was house sitting while I walked the labyrinth, which was phenomenal. So here's another finger labyrinth. This is a plastic one made by iSpiritual, and kids love these. So here's a little girl enjoying that. And here's a great labyrinth. This is a frozen lake, and somebody went out there with a shovel and shoveled it so that ice skaters could skate through. So a third type is called a Roman labyrinth. This is a rounded one. And on the upper left is a square one, more typical that you see in Rome and Italy, made from mosaics. And because mosaic pieces are square, you often see them square. And these pictures are from labyrinthos.net. And then another type, there's kind of like the leftover category of labyrinths that are, this one is called Earthworks and some other different designs. So this is by Alex Champion, Earthworks Labyrinth on his property in California. And this was with the one morning in winter in California with the dew and the, I guess it was frozen dew on the labyrinth in the morning. And here's another one that he made. He always plants labyrinths in them, and he would have plants daffodils in the labyrinths. And so he would always have a party in the spring, and all the flowers would be in bloom, and we'd go up there and walk through the labyrinths. It's great fun. Here's another one that he did at another Dowsers conference. And this is done in chalk. So you can do a labyrinth in chalk on a parking lot. I've done that many times for conferences. It's really fun. The design he used is the one in the lower right here. And here we can kind of see a close up. This is a great activity to do with kids. Kids love to color in with chalk, and then they have a labyrinth to walk. So there's the design and the size of this one coming up. It's called a wave meander. So you go in through the bottom, and then you go all the way through here. You go to the end here, and you come back and come out. It feels very relaxing. So this is a wave meander he did for Charity Grace Kirk, who claims she's the great-grandmother of James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. So think about that for a second. So this is, as you can see, done in her yard on her lawn with little stones standing up there. And another earthwork. These take a lot of work. Underneath each of these is excavated a whole draining system so that they don't flood. So this is like the testosterone labyrinths, the big, huge earthworks that Alex Champion was actually, that Champion is his last name, but he was the champion of these. When I've made labyrinth, they've been a little less testosterone involved. Here's his daffodil labyrinth. And again, this is just when a few of them are blooming, but this is the same labyrinth that you saw the frost on. And when they all bloomed, you get to walk through there. It's just beautiful. And here's one he painted in a park in San Francisco. He did quite a few, that's him painting on the left there. He did quite a few labyrinths in children's parks. They love to run through these. One of my private art students had autism, and he was nonverbal. And I worked with him with a bunch of different activities. But when we got to labyrinths, he really liked that. And we drew them. And then I took him to walk one. And he loved it so much he didn't want to leave. And he began speaking. His mother said he wanted to go back to the labyrinth. This was the labyrinth up at the ARE that I had built. And he wanted to go every day. And he would run through a bunch of times. And he actually became verbal as a result. And here's a very romantic one done from Luminaria. So that's a very fun thing to do at night. This looks like it might be on a beach. And this is at a spiritual center in Milwaukee, Oregon. And this labyrinth you're looking at is actually cut out of carpet. So it's two, you could actually probably make two labyrinths, one with the opposite colors. So this is like inset, like inlaid wood. So the gray part was cut out and then the reddish brown and then put together. And this is the carpet in the floor of this room. So you could use it for walking a labyrinth, or you can put your chairs and tables and use it for other things. And this is at the uh, TLS gathering, which is the Labyrinth Society. So you can join that. They have great events. We have a gathering every year. We've met online since the pandemic. And the next one coming up is likely to be either online or hybrid. So it makes it a little easier. They have it in a different city every year. And some cities were easier and less expensive to get to than others. So it's actually nice that they, along with everybody else, are doing hybrid things. So one guy decided the year before the event that he was going to make a labyrinth out of old CDs. And so a year before the event, he sent an email out to everybody in the Labyrinth organization and said, this was at the time where people were not, AOL had sent us 15 CDs that we didn't want to use. So he collected them all and he made this labyrinth, and it was holographic, of course. And it's a little hard to see in the picture, but it just absolutely, there were like rainbows sparkling out of this with the sun shining on it. And here's the Park Rose Community Labyrinth and in Portland. And you see the doorway to it has a turtle with the shape of this particular labyrinth on it. And here we are. We went there and walked it, and this gal was drumming as we walked. It was really amazing. And so here we see close up, they built it with little like paver stones, and the children in the school painted rocks. As you can see, one of the rocks says rock on, but they would paint the rocks with some of their favorite symbols. And then when they went to walk the labyrinth, they could find their very own rock that they did. So, and here's another labyrinth in Taos, New Mexico. And this photo is them walking it at a World Labyrinth Day event. And here she is drumming. Drumming is a great thing to do in the labyrinth. And animals love the labyrinth, and they love to sit in the center. There's lots of photos of animals that, even when no one else is out walking the labyrinth, you walk by and they have just found their way to the center and stay there. I think that's because the center's energized. Whenever people walk around the labyrinth with the focus, the intentions energizes the center. And a lot of people who walk a labyrinth can feel a temperature difference in the center, or just a feeling of energetic difference. And a lot of people say the center feels healing. And that's because of the energy that is put into the center as people walk around. So this is another year at the Labyrinth Society gathering. They decided to use bottles, old wine bottles. So they told everybody, bring your own wine bottles. And I guess we didn't bring enough wine, drink enough wine that year, because those sticks that are standing up there should be holding more wine bottles. And here's Carol Posh Comstock, who's a labyrinth builder, and she's finishing off one of the wine bottles so we can put another one in the stick. She's a fiber artist, and she did that hat on the right. It's a beanie, and she embroidered, knit a whole labyrinth right there on her hat. She has her website's Goods of the Spirit, and she does amazing goddessy things. Check her out. She's really good. This is a private labyrinth in Portland, Oregon, that we got to see on the Kinney's property, and it's absolutely beautiful. And the whole labyrinth path is built with these beautiful plants, and there's water in the center. And they also, I don't know if I have a picture, but they also have the ashes of all of their animal friends that have been part of their family are buried here with either a statue of a cat or a dog over it to mark them, which is really charming to do. So this was Labyrinth for Peace in March of 2000. And what we have here was, this was before 9/11, we could do things like this. So this is one of those labyrinths set up right in front of the Capitol building for 3 days. And here's another one. This is Sue Ann Foster in the center. All of us are wearing my wearable art pieces, and you'll recognize Sue Ann Foster's painted canvas labyrinth we've seen before in the slideshow. And there we are walking labyrinths, focusing on peace right at the Capitol building. And here we have the back of us. So again, what happened here was when the labyrinths got taken up and left, I don't have any pictures of it, but all the labyrinths had the imprint on the grounds of the Capitol. And a couple of gals who live in DC said they went 2 weeks later and you could still see the imprint from people walking. The labyrinths was still on the Capitol lawn. So here we see a 3-circuit labyrinth here. And we're going to look at how similar the twists and turns look to the brain. And of course, when we have a left brain, right brain, and we often talk about the two halves of the brain and integrating them. And so here's the two sides. So what some people believe happens is as you walk this labyrinth path, as you walk across the midline here, which would refer to the midline here, you are connecting both sides of the brain. And it also has a relationship to your fingerprints. So the labyrinth design is an archetypal image that really relates to deep symbolism, even in the human body. And it's related to the, other round things like the yin yang and a mandala. Those are both my artwork. So is this one. Here's another mandala. And crop circles also. Some crop circles are actually labyrinths. Here's another one that I did in the shape of a heart called The Flowering of Love. This was an artist in residence I did with Labyrinth Enterprises. And these close-ups, sadly you can't see it here, but this is all painted with glow-in-the-dark paint and glow-in-the-dark glitter. So when the lights are on during the daytime, you walk it, and then when it's nighttime, the whole path of the labyrinth shows up for a couple of hours with glow in the dark. So here it is. Yes, a very magical one. And you can just barely see this kind of off-white heart in the center. That's glow in the dark paint and glitter. So when when the lights are off, this centerpiece glows too. So how can you tell if a labyrinth needs glitter? If it doesn't have any. So here's the center of the a labyrinth I made for the Shrine of Holy Wisdom in Mesa, Arizona. And they wanted a canvas labyrinth. All right, let's see. Why are we stuck here? I'm trying to make it go forward. Huh. That's funny. Let me get rid of this and see if that works. There we go. So, whoops, now we went forward too many times. There I am painting it. And what they wanted was, let me go back to this. They wanted something that felt like you were walking on the grass. So that's why we chose green canvas, and that's why the lines here are kind of sponge painted, so it looks like you're walking on grass. And this is how you construct a labyrinth like this. So I use a toilet plunger, a new one, of course, in the center, and I drill a hole in a yardstick, and then these clips clip 2 or 3 yardsticks together. Those yardsticks have holes in them, and then these pens are erasable fabric markers. And so what I do is use this as my compass, And if you look very, very closely, you can see a couple of lines here. So those are drawn with the erasable fabric markers. And then once I draw the concentric circles, then I go in and draw the other lines and then paint it in before they disappear, so that you can see this a little closer. So here's the holes for the pens, and here's how I clip them together, and it has wheels on the bottom. So these are wheels that are attached to the wood, and those are the lines that you draw. So here's the Church of the Epiphany in Washington, D.C., and John Ritter of Paxworks built this labyrinth on their floor. And this just shows a little bit of how they laid it out. And it's interesting that the color brown that they picked happened to be called grounded. And there's on the lower left, John painting this labyrinth on the floor. So it's nice because the brown here gives you an indication of where the labyrinth is, but it's not really bright so that it doesn't really interfere with the beautiful wood floor. And here it is at the dedication. And so, you know, when other church events are happening, they can put the altar on top, which is a really cool place to have the altar in the center of the labyrinth. And then they can move that furniture away and people can walk the labyrinth. And a lot of these churches have the labyrinth open, you know, once or twice a month, some of them every week, for a certain amount of time for people to come through. So here's a labyrinth in Myanmar, which used to be Burma, that Reverend Jill Jeffryan built. And if you look at these circles, you know, they start out as concentric circles. So we'll see how they did that. And this is a group of people. They have a similar makeup to what I had. Excuse me. With they might have a string here, or it might be a skinny piece of wood, and everybody's making either marks on the ground or dropping stones or something until they go around the entire circumference, so they know where those concentric circles are. And then they go in and they put these little brick pieces. They may be actually putting those brick pieces down. And then if they get a whole thing that looks like a target with these bricks, then they go in and take the ones away to make the other paths that aren't part of the concentric circle. So here's some kids in Germany that made some. And so the kids love this. They start out with the chalk, and see, here they are with the rope again, and you can very faintly you can see a little piece of red tape here, and there's a piece of red tape behind him. And as you bring this rope around like a compass, then they draw their little chalk marks. So here's some more kids doing some more, and then they've pretty much got it done. And so they still have it chalked in, so they were holding hands and walking the whole labyrinth. It is going to be painted, but it's always a good idea to check it out before you paint it and make sure all the paths are in the right place. And here's the guy that came along to put the paint on top of their chalk lines, and then it was done. And this is in their playground, so the kids get to walk the labyrinth there. It's a good thing to walk before you take a test. It really can get your brain sparked up. So here's another one at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And again, it made by the beautiful rock. John Ritter, Paxworks did this. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Go back a second. And this is Robert Foray, who's kind of the godfather of the Labyrinth revival in the United States. He was the one that kind of got all the initial conferences going in the early 1990s. He invented a way to make a labyrinth out of tape on carpet. This is what he's got in his hand here is one of those tape machines that you use for taping boxes, but he re-engineered it backwards so that you could attach it here in the upper left. It's attached onto the end of a broom handle, and then you don't have to crawl on your hand and knees, which is really nice. And again, you see what's going on. There's this rope here with the marks on it, and so this guy is pulling the rope and they are following along, and they're going to get, here it is, you can see on the lower left what it looks like. And then when they get all the concentric circles done, then they go in and follow the labyrinth pattern, and they rip up the parts of the tape that don't need to be there to create the other paths, but it's the easiest way to do it. And Robert Frey is a genius. He's invented all kinds of labyrinth stuff. He's written labyrinth books, and he's retired now, but you can still find a lot of his information. He's very generous with it. He gives a lot of stuff away free at robertfrey.com. And that's the end. This is me, my little feet, and my little labyrinth dress. As you can see, it's a fabric with labyrinths on it. Walking a labyrinth in California, and carved into there, you can barely see in the ground there with the flowers around, is Our Lady of Guadalupe. And this is my friend Bijay Mosier on the beach. And I don't know where, but she created a labyrinth. And she said at the last minute when she left her house, she got guidance to bring an umbrella and her high heels. And so she got a great picture. So we have some upcoming online workshops I'll just mention, and then we'll do question and answers. And so today at 2:30 Eastern, we're going to be making our own finger labyrinths. And these are some examples. And if you're seeing this video after today, all my workshops are available to download and purchase later. So you get all the downloadable instructions and patterns and a recording. So you can actually do this anytime. And then the next one is Paris's influence on Cassatt, Sargent, Whistler, and other American artists. That's Thursday, May 12th. You get a choice of 11 in the morning or 7 in the evening. And that's based on a show that is currently at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts in Richmond, Virginia. It's an extraordinary exhibition, one of the 3 or 4 best exhibitions I've ever seen in my life. And whether you get to go see the exhibition or not, this will be a great show. If you get to go see it, it's good background. And if you don't get to go see it, well, it's better to see this than nothing. And I think that's here we have one more. Artist in Astrology, Patterns and Creativity with me and Stephen Poplin. And we compare the astrology charts of artists. And on July 24th, we'll be comparing Edward Manet and Bertha Morisot. Bertha Morisot is the only female artist that exhibited with the Impressionists from the very first show. Mary Cassatt exhibited with them later, but she's very unsung. And in many ways, I think she and Mary Cassatt are the most skillful of all the French Impressionists, but they don't get as much press. So we're going to find out more about that. And so thanks for attending. And so next Saturday is World Labyrinth Day. World Labyrinth Day is the first Saturday in May every year. And people walk a labyrinth, walk at one as one. So at 1 o'clock local time, you can walk a labyrinth, whether it's a finger labyrinth that you make with me or somebody else, or find an actual labyrinth. And from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon local time, you walk your labyrinth, and it creates like an unbroken rolling wave of peace and love energy that goes completely around the world in 24 hours. So now you know how you can participate in that if you'd like to next weekend or in any future World Labyrinth Day. And that is the end of our presentation. And I'm going to just stop the recording, and then we'll take questions.